Will AI eventually become a better storyteller than humans?
Why can you not read a book and then see the next part as a movie? And this is possible with the technology we have right now.
I'm here today for us to ask the difficult questions, to be more intentional in addressing these tough conversations and exploring how we can approach AI in a way that unlocks more growth for society.
So we want to be those helpers, those facilitators to help authors and creative storytellers with the best tools out there to tell their stories, to get them to their audiences.
AI is not coming, AI is here. It's reshaping industries, it's redefining creative work and raising critical questions about the future of jobs, storytelling, and intellectual property.
You're listening to Intentionality with Paul Kemp.
It is my privilege to welcome today to our studio Louis-Neil Korsten and Tertius Nivaud. Welcome, guys.
Good to be
Thanks,
here.
Paul. Good to be here. Good to be here again in the nice studio.
So the company you both are involved in, the company you run, Book, has recently made a big pivot into fiction. How did you approach that pivot with intentionality, and what lessons did you learn along the way?
So, yeah, we did have quite a big pivot recently. I think a lot of it was informed through our trip to the US, and it's maybe worth just taking a double-clicking on that because that was a very big learning journey for myself, and I believe Tasha's as well. The two of us were in San Francisco. I lived there for about 4 months, Tasha's for about 3 months, I believe, and we were in and amongst some of the biggest and the best. That really is where the best of the best entrepreneurs kind of go to build some of the most incredible companies you've ever seen. Now, a lot of what we've learned in San Francisco, we've brought back with us to South Africa, and more specifically back to Booked. And a large part of that was around how to look at a market, how to look at what you're building for which market and how you're going to approach it. And through that whole process, the question kept coming up, hold on, if we need to take a step back and say, look, what's the most efficient way to get from where we are now to where we want to be? And that kind of really inspired a lot of the pivot into fiction was people love stories. People love storytelling. I myself, I think, read probably a fantasy book a week growing up and couldn't get enough of it. And we realized that in getting people to start reading, that's job one. Get them to fall in love with reading first. And then we can add more genres, more diverse books, more different viewpoints, etc. But job one was, let's get people reading. Let's get them to fall in love with reading. And from there, we can build a foundation to grow a big company that really does have a big and positive effect on the industry as a whole. And that's kind of what informed a lot of the pivot for us, was just understanding how to grow a startup, essentially.
For those that haven't seen that episode where we spoke about Book, Neil, and maybe they haven't experienced Book yet, just a very quick why. Why is the why behind Book? And if you talk about the why, just maybe elaborate on what was the original version and where are we now?
So I think the quickest way to describe this is Book started about 4 years ago. And I was very fortunate to go study quite a bit and many different degrees. And I finished reading, it's actually that book back there, 0 to 1. And I realized I probably learned more from this book than an entire module in my BCom degree. And that got me thinking, geez, nonfiction books are such an incredible way to learn, but it's not accredited. You can't use it on your CV. You can't go to an employer and prove you've gained this knowledge. So Book started with the goal of, first and foremost, the big vision has always been, I want more people to read. Because it's such an incredible, not only form of entertainment, but form of education for myself. I use it for both. And it really has helped me throughout my life. And that was the big goal, was let's get people to read more. And then when the thought struck me about 0 to 1, I realized here's an interesting opportunity to actually turn nonfiction books into a tangible benefit for your professional career. And in so doing, I want to try and get more people to read nonfiction books. So Book started there. Let's kind of accredit the knowledge you gain from reading, create quizzes based on the books. You come onto the platform, take the quizzes. But as we all know, startups go through countless pivots. And throughout the journey, we started working with big corporates to help get their teams reading together. The whole team would jump onto the platform together. It's a social reading application. So kind of like a digital book club, if you will. Everyone's reading the same book, commenting on the book together. And through that, you're developing your skills, tracking how your skills are developing. And then the layer that is the interesting one that I think is a large part of the topic today is AI. How we approach bringing AI into not only education, but reading and what that could actually look like. So you could actually read with an AI, ask it deeper questions about the book, try and understand it from different aspects, give me examples, so on and so forth. That's the brand new aspect to what we're building. And that's the part where we've struggled a little bit in the industry as a whole, which has sometimes gotten us into a little bit of trouble. But that's what we're kind of doing at Booked, is really trying to build the next generation of a book and how people read a book.
Okay, that's the part I want us to get to. I want us to talk about the AI and this little bit of trouble that you're talking about that you got yourself into. Tashius, maybe this question is for you. I love Booked. I've used Booked. I've read a number of books on Booked. And I think the way you used AI specifically around the nonfiction was good. There was something in the app, AI in the app, where you can ask questions, you can engage, you can get involved in a conversation with not just the other people in your social group reading the book, but also the AI itself. But now with this pivot to fiction, you have taken the interaction, the engagement with AI to another level. Tell us a little bit more about what you've done there.
So context and insight's very, very important. I don't know about you. Sometimes when you read, you skip a day or two, and then you have to remember, where was I? Imagine reading Harry Potter or Lord of the Rings, and suddenly you can't remember Middle Earth or how some of the characters relate to other characters, or just get an inside track on how this is playing out in the scene. And that's where we made a massive difference in helping people understand context, get insight, guidance, coach, companion, helping you. And I mean, if you think about it, we have the Gutenberg press where we had physical books. Then we had the innovation of ebooks in the 70s. But books hasn't really evolved or innovated since then. I think that's where Booked comes in, especially with AI enhancement to the next level.
Thanks for that, Tashius. I think I might go and read some of these old books that I have read in the past, like A Lord of the Rings, especially if you can have this additional level of engagement with some of the characters through AI. I think it can change the experience that one has with a book like that. Louis-Neil, I'm sure that a lot of founders in businesses have a moment of doubt. You've spoken to me about this moment of doubt that you experienced in America, in San Francisco, when you were there. I think you alluded to it now. Maybe just expand on that for us a little bit.
Yeah, I think Jeff Bezos actually has a lot of really good insights into this whole idea of doubt and committing to a decision when a decision has been made. But I think the pivot in of itself it's a monumental pivot, because you're essentially shifting. If you take a step back, you could say you're still just reading a book, whether it's nonfiction or fiction. But it's fundamentally a different market, and you're moving from education to entertainment. Those are two very different industries with different outcomes, different wants, and different needs from the people participating. So it's a massive shift for a company to make, to not just shift industries, but actually how they approach building a product. And I think the moment of doubt, I don't really think it's more of a continuous process. Instead of like an acute, it's constantly trying to understand, are you on the right track? Are you doing the right thing? And you can imagine, you're building a business in the B2B space, and you're growing and you're getting corporates on board, and then having to shift all your attention and into the fiction market. That's a very big change. And I think that process in the US kind of really highlighted a lot of how to approach those, call it moments of doubt, and what I really learned from those founders that side, where it's not so much about doubting yourself, it's about making sure you have enough information to commit to a decision when you make a decision. So I think Jeff Bezos speaks about the get to 70% information or data and then make the decision, because that remaining 30% takes too long to acquire, and then that time delay is not worth it. So for us, it was about understanding, all right, we need to objectively look at where we are and where we want to go. Do we believe we're on the right track to get there? Do we believe there's a better track? All of that. Those are multiple moments of doubt throughout that whole process.
Yeah, being in San Francisco, ground zero for AI, it literally felt like the gold rush back then in California, and AI maybe being the gold now. And a lot of what I saw, the privilege of being a little bit older, you start to see how patterns reoccur and return and learn from that. We literally had 3 or 4 events every evening we could attend to, met hundreds of people, and everyone's like going for the same thing. It's how to implement AI into whatever problem is out there to solve problems. And we've seen a lot of mistakes. We also made some mistakes ourselves. But one thing that we saw is that we're at an age where I'm an innovation junkie. I love innovation. I'm an early adopter. And I read a lot. And something interesting that I saw being from South Africa is TV was invented in 1927, if I'm not mistaken, Philo Farnsworth. 1927. The British adopted television sets by 1936, if I'm not mistaken, and South Africa adopted TV in 1976. So from 1927 to 1970, 50 years, because they wanted to control and they were scared of TV as a platform. Now you can imagine how it stifled innovation, technological advancement in South Africa. We were behind with almost half a century because of this new innovation. And what we saw in San Francisco, there's a lot of things happening very, very fast. But there's a lot of people with this old South African mindset trying to control because they're scared. They're scared that it's going to inhibit and give a different narrative. That's what I saw. I saw that, for the first time in many years, we're at a place where innovation can explode. It's even in the US, innovation has been on decline since the 1970s. Why? There's too much information. Nothing can curate, aggregate all this information and make sense of it so that we can solve problems. Suddenly, we're at a place where we can do this now with artificial intelligence. But now suddenly, we've got this mindset where we're scared. We want to control. And that's going to disrupt a lot of industries. And then what we saw, especially, we struck a nerve in the publishing and author world.
I think maybe just to add on to that, a really good example is, don't quote me on the specifics here, but the general concept is correct, where the Middle East actually refused to adopt the printing press for a very long time. I even think that decades, if not centuries, because a lot of the scholars, a lot of the calligraphers were scared of losing work, etc. So they didn't adopt the printing press and therefore could not distribute information at scale. The effect that had on the Middle East as compared to Europe, it's incredible. I mean, the rate of advancement in Europe after the adoption of the printing press is through the roof. And I think that is I think what that highlights is we have data points for a lot of what's happening right now. This is not, yes, the technology is fundamentally new and the rate at which it's developing is a lot quicker. But at the end of the day, it's following the same pattern. And we have data points in the past to look at and reference and say, okay.
But that's repeating history. So we have the same people saying that TV is going to kill theater. Theater still exists. I mean, West End Broadway is still pumping. It's going well.
And ebooks replacing normal books.
And we're selling ebooks like crazy. So again, it's a mindset that we need to address. And people say, no, it's different with AI. How's it different?
And I think the only thing I would say that I think with AI that's interesting is, of all the, call it revolutions, they all had a long adoption cycle. So it took, like the TV, for example, that's obviously a smaller revolution, but all the macro or the big revolutions had a fairly long adoption cycle. The only real difference, okay, there's a couple, but the big difference I see is that AI, the adoption cycle is simply just very compressed because all of a sudden everyone has access to the same technology around the world. All the previous revolutions, the people who built the initial technology always had the best versions for a long time, so they could gain an advantage, they could move forward. And then the knock-on effects of the adoption rate was a lot slower throughout. But with AI, we have, the average South African can have the same access to the same technological or the same AI models as your average American, as your average European.
Lou, and I think what you're saying, maybe that's where we have the problem with the adoption, the speed, is people don't have enough time to understand what AI is.
Yes.
So now we kind of almost go to a religious mindset in terms of, no, I hear someone saying AI is bad, so I adopt that religion or belief, which is not the case.
Yeah, it's like a knee-jerk reaction. And I think there was a lot of people initially. I know when the first GPT came out, there were so many people saying this is going to take everyone's jobs, guaranteed. And then that initial fear is very contagious. That initial fear-mongering just spread like wildfire. But the problem with that is it then causes a pushback against any new technological development in AI because so many people are concerned about their job being taken. But if you go look throughout all the revolutions, there was job displacement. I mean, we can't deny that. And the problem with AI is because it's so compressed, the timelines, the job displacements are going to seem quicker and maybe more extreme. But I do believe that it's kind of that dip and then it will reset and start creating more jobs.
But that's one of the major things that I've seen is there's a segment of society that's so advanced and so on the cutting edge, on the fringe of this new technology and AI and understanding it, running with it. But there's also abstraction and a disconnect of ordinary people. And I think it's necessary for kind of AI whisperers, people whisperers, to build those bridges. And I think that's what we essentially want to do with Booked, is how to create a symbiotic relationship between this new innovation, this new tech, and how we do everyday learning, reading.
I want to take a moment to thank our sponsor, the FFG Group of Companies. Take another step into living a more intentional life by being more intentional with your finances and insurance. As a trusted provider of a wide range of financial services, the FFG Group offers innovative, tailored solutions that help companies and individuals thrive and flourish. They are an amazing company that I believe in because they embody intentionality in everything they do, and I'm proud to partner with them. FFG is an authorized financial services provider. Ready to take the next step? Click the link below and start making better, more intentional financial decisions, or visit their website. Remember, with FFG, you create the memories, we ensure the journey.
Okay, I want to unpack that a little bit further, but you said a lot of things now that I think we need to just pause on. Firstly, both of you spoke about fear quite a bit, and the fear of AI, job displacement or job replacement. My idea has always been that, yes, there's job displacement, yes, there's job replacement, but there's also job creation. And so every single technology there's ever been has also created new jobs that we didn't even know was going to exist 10 years from now, 20 years from now. But I think the fear has always been that AI will replace certain types of jobs. And the way I've seen it is maybe not things like creative work, things like storytelling, authoring a book, people working in that industry. But I think what you're trying to tell me here is there's actually a fear of that happening now as well, of AI actually taking over as the storytellers of the future. Is that a legitimate fear? Is that something that could happen? Or do you think there's always going to be a place for authors, storytellers in the future?
One thing you said that's very interesting is Sam Altman actually spoke about this as well. No one expected this, and everything seemed to unfold backwards. For a long time, everyone thought AI was going to replace blue-collar work first. It now turns out that it's most likely going to replace that last. Robotics is still a very big challenge in the replacement of blue-collar work, if you will. Whereas now people are coming to realize that it's actually the white-collar jobs that are facing some serious disruption in the shorter term. I do think automation over the medium long term will kick in with regards to robotics, but I actually think that's going to lead to an incredible amount of growth. So a good example is the Dock Workers Union in the US, where they were so scared of kind of replacement, they went on strike, causing massive delays in the distribution of consumables and really important stuff throughout the US. And that was all about essentially automation. They wanted to make sure that they keep their jobs. So they went on strike, holding, I don't want to say a full country at hostage, but I think that's what they were trying, because they're so scared of innovation. But then if you actually look at where countries have successfully implemented this innovation, the productivity is through the roof, and more jobs were created as a result. The jobs are different. Yes, it wasn't as manual, but is that not a good thing? Do you not actually want your people to stop doing the manual stuff and more the creative stuff, the oversight stuff, and so forth? So I think with regards to that was a bit of a tangent, but just to double back to the original question around white collar work, creative work, and then blue collar work. We never really expected AI to come for the white collar work first. And I think a thing that people don't talk about enough is the fact that Alan Turing in the 50s, I believe, wrote a paper where he introduced the Turing test, or where he was kind of the father of AI.
Yeah.
Where if Tash and I sit here, you put a screen between the two of us, and I kind of speak to the person or thing behind that screen. If I can't tell whether that's an AI or not, it's passed the Turing test. That was always the holy grail of AI. And we've actually, I believe the guys at US San Diego, actually this year, proved that the Turing test has been passed. And that's something that no one is talking about. And that is such an important thing to understanding AI's role in society and what that means. If it can essentially replicate or mimic a human, what does that mean for creative work? What does it mean for white collar work? So I do believe that AI is there to increase productivity and assist humans in the short term. It's very difficult to see over the long term what it's going to do, but I do believe that it's very important we have human storytellers, authors telling their stories, but assisted through AI, because the amount of value that can be created then is just absolutely immense. And I think it's quite important that we kind of help that process along, because I think the more we are scared of the technology and push back against it, the more it's actually going to do the exact opposite. It's not going to help us. It's actually going to start replacing us.
I had a very interesting experience yesterday or last night with my kids. They're into gaming, Minecraft, Lego games, Nintendo. And I showed them Sora on OpenAI, where you can literally just speak to Sora. And at first they were very hesitant. It's like, what's this going to help us? And then suddenly when I introduced them, and they realized there's benefit, because they started asking Sora on OpenAI and this, what are some of the tricks and strategies they can use
In the
games, in Minecraft, where to dig for what. I could see something in them happening, and I just had to facilitate this. Like, but ask this question, what about this? Kind of almost a real life prompt engineer there for a moment for them. I could literally in a few minutes see the shift in their mindset and their attitude towards this artificial intelligence. And I think to a certain extent, we can see that, we can facilitate that. And I think, but opening up the discussion is very important. I had to nudge them a little bit and open up the discussion, say, hey, let's see what happens. I think a lot of people are scared to open up those discussions.
Okay. The central theme, if you read about AI, if you watch TED Talks about it, if you listen to podcasts about it, the central theme is always how the people that are going to benefit from AI are the people that are going to work with AI and learn how to work with AI. So it's not about fearing AI. It's about how you can use AI to enhance what you do, to help you. So if we bring that back to storytelling, how do you believe AI and books can support authors, can help authors, can assist authors in their storytelling journeys?
I recently had a conversation with a publisher. I had to explain how we're using AI and what we're doing and what we're not doing. It is a complicated industry. And one thing I did tell them was I think that they are sitting on a mountain of gold. Them and their authors, they are literally media giants at the moment. They have one of the most important things you can have in the future of entertainment and storytelling, which is the actual story. They've got thousands and thousands of written stories, which is incredibly detailed, incredibly well put together, well structured. And if you think about for every author that gets a movie deal, how many are there? A handful. How much value that unlocks for the author, how much value that unlocks for their fans, and the industry as a whole. Now, what if we could 10x the amount of authors that get a movie deal? That's not necessarily possible today because of restrictions in several aspects in that entire industry. But as soon as you start introducing technology that can create various forms of media at scale, all of a sudden you are looking to help each author get their own, call it movie deal, or create IP that they would not previously have been able to create. Imagine being able to create a digital twin of Harry Potter, where people can actually speak to Harry and engage with Harry throughout his journey while reading. How did you experience this, Harry? How was that? Would you have done this differently? The amount of value that unlocks, not only for the author in terms of a new level of IP or new layer to their story, but the amount of value for the reader in terms of them being able to explore the story as they had built in their own head. So the technology that's going to kind of transform, and I recently saw a sneak peek of OpenAI's new Sora model. So the Sora Tash is referred to as the real-time voice, was one of the personalities. They also have a Sora model, which is text to video. Now, they released Sora 1, and I'm sure a lot of people have seen that. It's where you've got that woolly mammoth running through the snow and the pirate ships in the coffee, but you could actually see that it was very clearly AI generated. They're going to be releasing a Sora 2 model, and that Sora 2 model is incredible. I couldn't tell the difference between that and a properly produced movie. It was phenomenal. Now, just imagine that's text to video. Just imagine what that means for books, for an author's written work, what value they can create throughout the various forms of media just based on that kernel of a story they have. And I spoke to the guys at another publisher about the fact that I think moving forward, the lines between the various forms of long-form content, whether that's movies or books, whatever it may be, are going to become more and more blurred. Why can you not read a book and then see the next part as a movie or a audiobook, or actually engage with the characters as they travel? Or why can that story not actually change based on how you're perceiving and interacting with it? All of these things are going to be why, and this is possible with the technology we have right now. If you're reading and there's a character or a scene and you really want to see what that looks like, should you not, the technology is there to allow you to kind of build that scene as you have it in your head. And that's what AI is going to allow us to do. And that's what we want to do. We're not here to replace authors or publishers. We don't want to author AI stories. We do think authors should be involved in the process. Humans should tell humans should be the ones telling the stories. But we want to provide the humans the tools to actually tell their stories in multiple different ways and allow the user to receive the story in whichever format or way they prefer. So really building tools to help the industry, the authors and the publishers build more value, become those media giants that I know they can, and actually, take on the likes of a Netflix. And that really is what we want to do. Is we don't want to work against them in terms of replacing an author. We think it's very important humans tell the stories, but we do want to give them tools to tell their stories in new ways.
But we need to start a sandpit. We need to start a platform where we can create this symbiotic relationship where we can make mistakes, learn. And I think it's just to have an attitude of, no, this is wrong, rather than almost like George Lucas with the digital cameras. It was this purist, no, we should use film for film. And George Lucas starting using digital cameras. And now it's everyday use for film to use digital cameras. But we had to start somewhere. So we want to be those helpers, those facilitators to help authors and creative storytellers with the best tools out there to tell their stories, to get them to their audiences.
Is this the living book concept that you're talking about? Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
That's something that's always been. So I've got a friend, she also actually runs a reading application. She's got something called an X book. I really wanted that name, but she's got it already. So we're looking at different words or different names. We're running with living book for the moment, but what we want to do is actually transform a book into a living book, something you can directly engage with. It can actually respond to you either through the characters or the media itself, turning into images or video or whatever it may be, and actually giving the end reader the power to determine how they want to consume a story written by the author.
I think it creates abundance, and I think there's a mindset sometimes to be gatekeepers rather than enablers. And we want to enable people to tell their stories using the tools of AI, not be gatekeepers and kind of create scarcity. I think there's more people with more stories. AI can't live your story for you, or that's something that's born from your heart. We know there's a lot of potential of telling stories. So why not enable it with these tools like the company?
Tash, is you talking about enablement through AI, but enablement through AI, through book. I think that's the goal. That's where you guys want to get to. Is that correct?
Definitely. Because we're on the cutting edge, we do the heavy lifting. We try to understand, to help people, because we know people are busy, but let us help you.
Okay. Something else that I just want to quickly talk about is the pace of development of AI. I think it's something that makes prediction very difficult. I don't think anybody could have predicted 5 years ago even where we are today with AI and what AI can do. But I do want to challenge you and ask you, if you have to think about the world of storytelling 10 years from now, what do you think it's going to look like? Paint that picture a little bit for us.
10 years from now, I'm not even confident to predict 2 years ahead,
Okay.
just based on how quickly things are changing. And in terms of the future of storytelling, I alluded to a little bit earlier, but humans, I really do believe humans should be telling the stories, but in a way where they're assisted by the technology. So I've spoken to many authors who already, they probably won't admit it, but they already use AI to help them come up with a world or character names or character backstories. Does that make the story any less, exactly. It's still, the architect is still the human. It's just simply that human can build a better product, can write a better book, can cater to their readers more effectively. And that's where we want to build towards, is the future. We do want to build towards the future of storytelling and essentially help these organizations and authors become media giants through the tools we're building to allow authors to tell their stories in any format they want to and allow the readers to experience those stories in any format they want to.
Just think about it. A physical book. Well, you like reading. A physical book has science in it. We can start from the paper it's printed on, the science it's needed, the framework that it has to happen in, the symmetry, the pause, the story structure, the hook, the hold, the payoff. There's so many things into a physical book we are kind of advocating the same. Like, let us help you with the new tech, with new frameworks, new kind of rhythms and symmetry. It has the same outcome, essentially. It's not different. It's the same thing. It's just a lot more advanced.
And maybe one last thing is, I really do think the technology is moving quick enough that we will get to a future quite soon where you can determine what story you're experiencing. You as the end user can actually determine, I like stories with X and Y structure that have this flow. And you've got the human author who's got that essentially core narrative, but that's adapting to your needs and your wants. So Tashes and I can watch the same story, but the story develops in slightly different ways. We experience it in different ways through different formats, but also different structures. And I think that elasticity, or that at least variability, is going to be incredible to storytelling in the future, is allowing the users to build their own stories off the back of the work the authors have done. And I do think that that's an absolute win-win for everyone. Not only is there an immense amount of IP being created to the benefit of the authors and the publishers, but you're also getting the rights. I mean, how many people spend half an hour on Netflix choosing what to watch? Imagine the future where you don't even need to do that.
AI does it for you.
And you've got the perfect story, whether it's Netflix or a book or whatever it is, and this thing's constantly adapting. So
I just want to jump in there. It's not either or, it's both and more, because we did some market research, and when we were working on some of the characters, some of our readers wanted to know exactly what the author's intent was, the look, the feel, the hair color. They want to have that character in their story. But some of the other readers were like, they wanted to make up their own character in their head. So we can enhance the intent and the objective, but we can also make it malleable for the reader to experience it differently.
One last thing is very, very important, and that just comes down to personalization. You're building the story how you best want to experience the story. Now, this is obviously, we're talking about Netflix and storytelling, quite focused on fiction. I don't want us to forget about nonfiction. It's something that's very dear to our hearts, is the fact that imagine a world when any child can read a nonfiction book with any character they deem or they want to. A character that's interesting, that can explain the story or give the story to them in a new way. Just imagine the power and the engagement that you can unlock in youth if you can actually bring the stories to them in a way they want to read.
Sounds amazing. I was smiling earlier when you were talking about a book or something that would have a different outcome for a different person, because I remember those books from the 80s where you get to the end of a chapter and it says, if you want this to happen, go to that page. You might be too young to remember it, but Tertius, I'm sure you will remember it.
Definitely.
It kind of sounds to me something like that, but with technology.
And this is maybe a call from my end to every author that's maybe listening, every publisher that's listening, is we are currently working with all the big publishers, and I'm working hand in hand with them to navigate this new world, what AI means for the industry. And I do understand it's a very scary thing to navigate because there's a lot of uncertainty around it. And I'm asking as many authors, many publishers as possible, let's have the conversations. The more we talk about it, the more we can remove that uncertainty, and the more we know we remove that moment of doubt.
Yeah.
The more we talk about it, the more we remove the doubt. And then we know what we're sitting with. We know what we're working with. So it's an open call from me. We want all authors. We want all publishers, all storytellers. Let's have the conversation. Let's not shy away from it. This world is moving quickly. AI is coming, and we want you guys to actually reap the rewards, reap the benefits. And we're going to do our very best to build a platform that can actually unlock that for you.
I think that's a great point to wrap up this conversation on. We can talk about this interesting and exciting topic for hours on end. But I think let's end off by just one last question from my side. If people want to learn more about Booked, if they want to follow the journey that you are on, where should they go?
Well, first of all, our website is always the first place to start, just booked.app or www.booked.app. You can also follow us on pretty much all the socials at Booked App. But then what I would say is, again, as part of the spirit of having this open conversation, you can actually contact myself at louis@booked.app. You can email me directly saying, listen, what you said was nonsense. I don't agree with this. Let's have a proper conversation. I encourage that. The more pushback, the better, because then we start removing that uncertainty. So got our website and our socials, but I would also say, please contact me directly.
Guys, that was awesome. I loved spending time with you today. Thank you for all your incredible insights. Let's end off this episode. It is, after all, Intentionality with Paul Kempf, with maybe just one intentional thing that one of you or both of you can think of that you want to share with our listeners, with our viewers, something that you may be proud of that you have done very intentionally recently. Is there anything that you'd like to share?
I'm currently reading a book, The Weirdest People in the World, Joseph Heinrich, and it literally states that reading changes your brain chemically and how that unlock wealth and abundance. And I want to implore people, please, just start reading. If it's a physical book, an ebook, even if it's audible, just start reading. It opens up worlds for you. So please start reading.
Fantastic. Thanks, Tertius. Anything from your side, Louis Neil, to end off on?
Mine, I'm actually going to not mention anything about reading. This is maybe I've had a couple of conversations with a few South African entrepreneurs, and the big thing I've tried to do was just bring back lessons we learned in the US back to South Africa, because I think we can learn a lot. And what I would implore all entrepreneurs, doesn't matter where you are in your journey, from an intentionality point of view, take a step back, look at your market and work backwards from there. I think it's going to unlock an immense amount of valuable information you really could use. Really double click on that market, understand your competitors and the history of the market, because the history will help you understand where you need to be going. So really, that's what I would say is from an intentionality point of view for all entrepreneurs. Please go deep dive into your market and work backwards to your product. I think it's going to it's going to show you some interesting things.
Valuable advice from both of you. Thank you, guys, Tertius, Louis Neil, for being here today, for being in our studio, for the time we have spent together. That's it for this episode. Thanks for joining. Thanks for listening. Thanks for watching. And thanks for your support.
Thanks for watching Intentionality with Paul Kempf. Subscribe, like, and click that bell to get notified when we release more episodes on how to live a life of intention and purpose.